Welcome to MRE Uncut, where we'll give you real and practical insights into the real estate scene in Melbourne. We'll discuss what's happening in the industry, all backed by MRE's history of over 30 years in the game. With that said, let's jump into this week's episode of MRE Uncut.
Welcome back to another MRE podcast. My name's Steve Fitzsimon and I'm met today with one of our business development managers, Levin.
Hello, everyone.
Kelly's been on the podcast before. You may recall that if you've been an avid listener. Kelly's here today to talk to us about a common misconception, which is the local agent is better.
Looking forward to it. Let's get into it.
Let's go. So this came out of a common discussion amongst business development managers at our office that they just went with the local agent when they're talking about having a conversation with a rental provider, as we're supposed to call them, but landlord, as I still call them, when it comes to choosing an agent. And they're going, you went with the local agent. I argue that point because I don't really see the relevance anymore. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's not the be all and end all. A lot of the time, it actually hinders your campaign and finding a really good renter and promoting your property online, getting a really great outcome. It usually, from our experience, it sometimes has the opposite effect.
So we're going to explore that because technology's changed a lot.
Yeah, 100%.
And so we sit there now, and this is, if you're a landlord out there, this is what we do. If you tell us that you own 27 Smith Street in whatever whoopsie-daisy suburb, what are you then going to do, Kelly, in terms of your research on 27 Smith Street? Yeah,
well, with the internet, you don't have to be in that suburb to be able to produce local knowledge. Everything at the moment is at our fingertips. We have programs in place as well that we can jump on and get a full profile of your suburb, what's leased, what's currently up for lease, everything like that. So
what will it tell you though? Because I'm sure if you scaled every listing in, I'll just make up a suburb here, Hawthorne, you'd be able to find street by street, every single property, look it up, find it. You're not going to do that though in a practical sense. How does your program identify what similar properties have leased for or are leasing for? Go into a bit more detail for me.
Yeah, so we've got access to a really great program that pulls recently leased data from realestate.com, which is where majority of our traction comes from. Over 80% of our users and traction come from realestate.com.
Yep.
So we have access to this program that you can narrow it down to really specific parameters that match comparable properties. So for example, if you've got a 2-bedroom apartment in Hawthorne, you can jump onto this program, plug in 2-bedroom apartment, Hawthorne, properties that have leased in a 0.2 kilometre radius, so really close proximity to your property. You can go even further. You can identify how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms, all that sort of stuff. And it comes up with your lease data within, usually we look at about 6 months. You can filter it longer. So you can get a really specific comparable report of what your property may be worth and is worth in the current market. So
there's no secrets anymore?
No secrets.
So effectively, an agent that uses a system like this, and let's face it, not all agents use this system. In fact,
Correct.
I don't know too many that do. But if you've got access to this type of tech, you can generate a report that gives you the exact same type of apartment in bedrooms, bathrooms and car parks, and you can look at distance from the property. So you know every rental result in this instance in the building and
Correct.
within cooee of that building over the last 12 months, which provides you with what you would think is all the data that you would need. What else would
Correct.
you need, is what I think. What else would a local agent know about that pool of rental properties and their level of availability than what you've been able to extract?
I don't believe you have more knowledge as a local agent, in my opinion. The big one I have found is when I'm talking to someone and they are discussing whether to go with a local agent or a non-local agent, a big one that comes up is, they're 5 minutes down the road, so they can open it more often, they can show more people through, which from our experience, is not necessarily the case. For us in particular, we've got a really great 30-day leasing strategy, which we've discussed previously, to be able to open your property up to 5 days a week with our amazing livability team. So it doesn't matter whether the property is 3 seconds from our office or 20 minutes, we have access. I had an example just the other day, actually, where an owner was deciding whether to go with a local agent or myself. And we had brought up a couple of their listings, which were literally under 2 kilometres from their office. There was no inspection times online. Let's face it, renters want all the information in front of them. They want to go down the path of least resistance. No one wants to pick up the phone anymore and call an agent and say, hey, there's no open times. Can I come see this property at X time? They just don't do it. They'll move on to the next property where you've got the time displayed. So that's a huge one that people think that because it's closer, more people will see it and you're more accessible to the property, which is not the case at all.
So it's about how often you're going to make, and I guess if I was a local agent, I'd go, oh, look, if anyone calls, I'm going to go down there and meet them and show them through the property. But we know that tenants don't call.
Right.
Because they're waiting to see an open time, because we've only got to look at the kids today. They don't even call each other. They just text.
Exactly.
You know, when my kids, they're just like text. So if I ask them to call someone, they go, oh, Dad, I feel a bit awkward about calling. You know, it's the generations are shifting, that they want that easy pathway, and that's choose their own time, book their own inspection, do that type of they expect that type of availability, and if they get it, well, then they're attracted to it.
Correct.
So we've got the market knowledge not providing you with a significant reason to sort of be there with the local agent. You've got the distance from the agencies being sort of pulled apart. What other things are owners sort of looking at when it comes to choosing a local agent over somebody who might be a bit further away?
Yeah. So generally as well, local agents are more sales focused versus property management focused.
Right.
A lot of the time their businesses are 80% sales and you've got property management on the side kind of churning. They may want to bring on the property with the insight of eventually selling it 18 months, 2 years, 3 years down the track.
So they're modelling their business from the sales side.
Correct.
They're bringing on the property management that might be a bit cheaper.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they go in basically to build a what do we call it? A stock of properties that'll be sold in the future.
Correct.
So if they get that sale in the future, then it doesn't matter to them if they're a little bit cheaper on the property management.
100%. Yeah.
And so you're looking at it, you're going, okay, well, they're a well-known brand and they're in the local area and they're a little bit cheaper, but effectively what you're doing is you're giving it to somebody who isn't as focused on property management and the service that's associated with it, and you're giving it to somebody who perhaps is really looking at as this giant pool of potential sales that they can do in the future.
Yeah, 100%. For us, on the flip side, our business is kind of flipped. We're property management focused. So we have a lot of resourcing into our property management division. So because of the extra resourcing, we have the capability to do stuff like extra open for inspections, after hours inspections, so up to 6:30, for example. We've got a whole team of livability agents, as we mentioned before. So again, it doesn't matter if the property is in South Yarra 3 seconds from our office or in Bentley, which is 25 minutes away. Also, when renters are looking, I've had a couple of questions from owners about local agents. When renters are looking, they don't pick a property based on the agent. They pick the property based on the marketing and the open times and what the property looks like and all that sort of stuff.
I guess to the renter, it doesn't matter where the agent is
100%,
because they're going to be living in the property. They only go to the agent to collect the keys and drop them off.
Exactly. So if you go with a local agent but they're not marketing the property correctly, there's no professional photos or there's no videos or there's no open times, just because it's a local agent, the renters aren't going to go there. They're going to the property, which may be a little bit further away or whatever it may be, that presents really well online. Okay,
so let's expand on that a little bit, because this is something that I saw was a fascinating extract. I was looking at a property that was in an outer suburb of Melbourne, where we've got a number of properties, and there was a few local brands that had established themselves in that area. And so one who might think that, oh, well, they're a well-known brand in that area. When I looked at their statistics, because everything's online now, we'd actually leased more properties than they'd leased in that suburb, as well as, as well as being a much further away from where that suburb is than the local agent. So you're looking at a level of expertise, and then also the statistics show how many properties they've leased over a 12-month period. And I think that's a real eye-opener, because if you're looking at an agency who might be locally based that has leased 150 properties in a 12-month period, well, you know that their leasing experience is based on leasing 10 or 12 properties per month.
Right.
And that then means that the exposure that they've had to marketing strategies and how they impact listings performance is limited to 10 or 12 attempts each month. And then you convert that to a larger agency such as MRE, where how many are we leasing a month now?
Oh, well over 100 at this point.
Yeah. So
we're leasing thousands in a 12-month period.
Thousands in a 12-month period. So therefore the refining of the leasing strategy is based on leasing thousands of properties per annum as opposed to leasing 100 properties per annum. And further to that, the outer suburb area might not be that busy a marketplace.
Right.
So, if you go to an outer suburb, they might only have 100 rental properties or 150 rental properties or less available at any given time. Yet if you go into a competitive marketplace, a super competitive marketplace like Melbourne, Richmond, South Yarra, South Melbourne, these sort of real hubs for renters, then you're competing in a market where there are more renters looking, and therefore the cream rises to the top in the way that they're presented.
100%. Yeah.
So
totally agree.
Yeah. So do you want the agent that is getting that exposure through the limited, or do you want the agent that is rolling out properties, going through the process of leasing on such a bigger number, so that they're refining the process so that it's more efficient every single day?
For sure. I mean, if it was me, I'd go with the agency that's more experienced, especially in a market as we're experiencing right now. There's, limited amount of properties. There's a lot of people, leasing. We're seeing various rents, all that sort of stuff. You want to go to the expert. It's like any industry. If you go to a dentist or if you go to their hairdresser, you want to be going to the best person who's going to give you the best outcome.
It's interesting. You'll drive to a dentist or a hairdresser to 100%, get your hair cut,
yeah.
But you'll think that you need a local agent. Okay, so we're now looking at tenancy databases, because we hear that, the local agent has got a stronger tenancy database. Where are you sort of sitting in terms of, understanding that a tenancy database does play a role? How much of a role do you see that a tenancy database plays in leasing most properties?
It definitely does play some sort of role. For us, we've got on our database, we've got thousands of tenants that churn over constantly. So that way you're marketing to people who are actually looking in the current market.
Yep. So will a local agent have an advantage there?
Not necessarily. A lot of people don't have the databases that we have, particularly. Also, database.
You expect an owner expects they've got a database.
Oh, you expect all the things, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it. Again, going back to the expertise, you're going to someone who's an expert, quote unquote, in their field. You just make the assumption that all these things are happening, but it's not necessarily happening.
Right.
In terms of finding renters, a lot of people are just jumping onto realestate.com, putting in their parameters and finding properties. So a tenant database does have an impact for sure, but the act of people looking online through realestate.com is a more effective way to lease a property.
So effectively, if we've got a better marketing campaign with better looking photos, better looking imagery, that type of stuff to get people there, and then heaps of exposure in terms of open times and availability for people to book their inspection, then that should overcome for example, having slightly better or wider database, but then running an ad campaign which is not at the peak of excellence.
100%. I had one relatively recently
Yep.
In a suburb where we've got properties, but it's not our main suburb that we
Yes.
target.
Yep.
Landed up going with a local agent.
Right.
The marketing wasn't great. I kept in touch with them. The property was online for over 2 months and
Wow.
didn't lease. I landed up bringing them over to MRE. We jigged up the marketing. We added videos. We added our livability team. So open times, we landed up leasing it within 3 weeks. And the owner is absolutely wrapped. And that was a real life experience of going for a local agent that they thought would be the be all and end all. And she's actually written a really great review, which is awesome, about her experience of going with a local agent and then now her experience with MRE. So that was really cool to see a live example of exactly what we're all talking about.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So I think if we look at it from the days of when I started in real estate, you were nappies, and I still remember working at the reception and handing out keys to renters. Right, so you'd literally the renters would come in, they'd see the ad on the Age and in the Age, and they'd all be reading the Age and have little cutout snippets and circles and things, and that they'd come in and they'd have to go to an agent, and obviously it would impact their choice of which properties they would see, because they would go, oh, that agent is in St Kilda, that's where I was, and the property is in Elstonwick, so I'm going to have to collect the keys from St Kilda, drive to Elstonwick, have a look at the property, and then drive back.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. And back in those days, we would know the results for our properties in our area because we would look at what else is being advertised in the Age.
Right.
But we wouldn't be looking in Elstonwick to look at what's being advertised in Elstonwick to keep across what properties have leased in that area. So your local knowledge played a much bigger role.
For sure.
But technology and the way of doing inspections, in that you meet the client at the property, you don't hand out the keys anymore, all of these type of things, has now sort of meant that the easier that you make it for a tenant, the more transparent that you make it for a tenant, the more that they are driven to inspect that property. And as long as the agency chooses to invest the time to come to the property on a regular basis, to make available their team to show the property, and they're happy resourcing their staff to go and inspect the property when they need to do the routines and so forth, then the difference has sort of turned into dust.
Right, 100%. And everyone wants everything yesterday and everyone wants everything straight away. So the easier we make it for a renter looking, the better outcome we're going to get for our rental providers, higher prices, better quality renters. It's a no-brainer, in my opinion. I've seen it from the other side and I know that it doesn't work firsthand. MRE does it 100% right. So yeah, definitely the local agent is definitely not the be all and end all.
Kelly, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, everyone.